So before we get started, you're gonna need one tool. I would recommend four. So the main thing that you actually need is going to be a Torx 6 screwdriver. Every single screw in here is going to be Torx 6. I also like having a sim eject tool or something else just very thin and rounded, so I can push down on. There's two different pieces in here I'm going to be pushing down on. And then I like having a very small flathead screwdriver for prying. Hello! I am joined here by my Bigscreen Beyond 1, and today we're going to be going over a complete teardown, reassembly, and then we're also going to be assessing all of the parts to see what is sourceable by the user and what is serviceable by the user. So first, we have the strap. There are many different strap options, some of which are third-party, which is fine. The interface, there are several third-party options for this as well. The only note is you're going to have these magnets in here, which are going to be 1 millimeter thick by 3 millimeters in diameter. They're going to be neodymium. You can source about 1,000 of them on Amazon for $10. So that's user serviceable. And then we have the headset itself, which is made up of a lot of different pieces, some of which are, some which aren't going to be user serviceable and sourceable. I'm going to start with the cover shell. The cover shell is going to be held on by 6 screws. There are many different options for cover shells. There is the official one, Bigscreen Beyond 2. Now has 3 different colors, with possibly more on the way eventually, that you can source first party. The Bigscreen Beyond 2 shell is completely compatible with the Bigscreen Beyond 1. It will just have an extra hole right here for the IPD adjustment. And Bigscreen has publicly announced plans to eventually sell these shells separately. If you don't want to buy first party, you can also do third party. You have a couple different options. JLC 3DP has their 8001 resin. You're going to want to do it in transparent with a oil spray. That does not impact tracking, and then you can dye that with RIT Dymore. Mine is a bit different. This is printed in Soraya Tech Blue in their emerald blue color, and it is clear coated with Rust-Oleum acrylic enamel clear coat. I like it. Neither of them impact tracking performance. We don't have numbers on either, as far as I know, for how IR transparent they are. But I know we're getting numbers from this soon. And if you have numbers on your own material that's IR transparent, perfect. Go right ahead and use it. Next, within the unit itself, we're going to have the tracking flex PCB, which is going to be mounted on a plastic backing. This is going to be held on by 3 screws here, here, and here. You're going to be very careful with this assembly. The plastic backing seems relatively strong, but you don't want to bend the PCB itself too hard. As you unscrew the final screw, the whole assembly is going to pop up a little bit. It's got the display flexes pushing up on it. You're going to want to take it, flip it forward a little bit, and that's going to expose the connector for the tracking flex PCB itself. You're just going to want to pop that upwards. And you can use like a small flathead screwdriver if you want. I just use my fingernail. When holding this, you're going to want to avoid getting too handsy with all the photodiodes, and you're not going to want to set it photodiode side down. This is going to contain all of your photodiodes and your microphone array, and none of this is going to be user serviceable. Now we have the unit. Mainboard is visible, and then plugged into that is going to be your header for your fan, your header for your accessory port, your header for your input, and then your 2 display connectors and your proximity sensor. I'm going to start taking out the easy ones. I'm going to start with the USB ports. They're going to be the exact same as the tracking PCB. You're just going to take under the metal piece, and you're going to pop upwards. Cool. Next I'm going to get the fan. I like using my little flathead screwdriver for this. You can also just use a fingernail. I'm going to take it, and this shouldn't be hard to get out. You're just going to kind of push it out, and try and do both sides. Don't just yank on one side hard. Get that out of the way. And then we're going to do the displays. You're going to pop this out, and then you have this black piece. You're going to get a fingernail or a flathead under there, and you're going to click it upwards, and then that should free the tracking flex, the display flex. Pull that, do the same thing on this one. Pull that. Now there's nothing else plugged into the main board, but it's going to be secured by 2 screws and then 2 stickers at the bottom. Alright. Now I'm going to take it, I'm going to move the display flexes out of the way, I'm going to move the USB connectors out of the way, I'm going to pull the main board upwards. It's going to be connected by these 2 stickers at the bottom still. So I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to peel those off. And so now they're attached to the board. It's fine if they're either attached to the board or attached to this. I'm just going to take this board, set it over there. Next, I'm going to get these 2 little metal brackets here. The way that they're secured is purely pressure. This little arm piece is going to face the bottom of the headset. And then there's going to be 3 little pieces here, small, small, and the big one. Big one is going to be facing the display. I'm just going to take these out. I've taken them out a couple times, so if I turn my headset upside down, it'll just escape. I don't want to deal with that. No, those are out. Next I'm going to get the USB connectors. Sorry, the main board is not going to be serviceable at all. The stickers, I'm not entirely sure of their purpose. They sit on exposed metal. I don't know if they handle anything grounding related. If I had to assume, they mostly just sit there to prevent damage to the display flexes on these sharp pieces. So you could probably source about anything for that. Next I'm going to get these little USB ports. It's going to be a single screw on each. With that screw undone, this piece should just come loose. You just need to pull it out and then up. And this should come with it. This is custom. As far as I know, this isn't going to be used as serviceable or replaceable at all. This is available in the CAD files, and we can print and use our own. It's going to be the same thing on the other side. Cool. Now I'm going to get to the front, and this is going to give us access to a couple more things. You can start over here, and there's a pretty good reason why you'd want to do that. This is going to be held by 8 screws, sorry. The small holes are going to have screws in them, and the big holes normally have magnets. Mine do not right now. But those are going to be more of those 1mm thick by 3mm in diameter neodymiums. This piece is printable, easily user serviceable. I don't think it's going to be high wear at all. I don't think there's much of a reason why you'd want to replace it. Mine looks cool, but it lets in a lot of light bleed. And is purely here to hide my serial number. Cool. Just kind of undo both sides, and then it should pop out. And then when setting this down, make sure you don't put any pressure on those display flexes. The reason why you want to get there first is these are high wear components. They have a habit of breaking. All you need to do to get to them is take this piece out, and then you can get a screwdriver in here and just be very careful not to scratch your lenses. I'd recommend a jig. And then you can unscrew these screws to pull them off. I'm not going to do it without the lenses out. So I'm going to go back over here, and we're going to get those lenses next. They're held in from the back by these heat sinks. So you're going to want to pick a side. And this is another reason why I recommend the lens jig. It not only prevents scratches, but if my hand moves the wrong way, I'm just going to get hand oils all over my lenses. Alright, now with those 4 screws on the heatsink loose, I should be able to just come over here. And it might be pretty hard, especially the first time you're taking it off. I should just be able to peel it up, and the thermal pad should come with it. I'm going to completely separate the 2 sides of my headset now. Everything from this side is going to go over here, everything from this side is going to go over here, so remember how to put it back. With that out, there's nothing holding in the lens and display assembly. So it's going to fall out there. And then this piece comes out through this hole. And there's also a piece of foam in there holding it in. Or a piece of foam in there blocking the light. I'm just going to leave it in as I push, and that's just going to fall out for me. There's that out. There's that piece of foam. We're just going to set that to the side for now. And then now we have our display and optic assembly. This is also going to have an IPD plate on it, on the Bigscreen Beyond 1. It's only held on by these 2 screws. And then just pull straight off. And there's my entire right display and optic assembly. So out of this is just a random piece of foam. All it does is block light, shove anything in there. This heatsink is custom. I imagine it could be metal 3D printed, but it also does sit at a slight angle. These pieces sit at an angle this way, and then the thing itself sits at an angle this way. So it might be a bit harder to get right, but all it does is dissipate heat. So it shouldn't need to be that perfect. That's just a thick thermal pad. I don't know exactly how thick it is, but it should be pretty easily replaceable. The IPD plates, we have the step files for the 64mm version. If you are not 64mm, that is fine. All you need to do is take those files and shift it 0.5 mm for every millimeter step on each side. Yeah. This is the display and optic assembly. We are not able to separate these as far as I know, so it's not serviceable. But the part number is actually on this for the displays, which are just SIA panels. SY103WAM01. And that's, as far as I know, the exact same part number that's on the Bigscreen Beyond 2. It's going to be the exact same process for the left. We're just going to unscrew those 4 screws. Going to do the exact same thing. Pry up that heatsink. Should take the thermal pad out with it. And I'm going to start setting all this stuff over here on the left, just to make it a bit easier. Lens is going to fall out. I'm going to guide the display flex out carefully. Foam is going to fall out with it. And I'm not going to take the IPD plate off of that, because it's the exact same assembly. Now we're left with just the frame. The frame is going to still have the fan, proximity sensor cover, strap mount. Yeah, the strap mounts first. All they are is this screw, which is a bit easier to access with the lenses out. And these are completely identical on either side. You can just mirror the part if you 3D print them. And these are 100% 3D printable. All they're going to be is this little plastic piece, and it's not a perfect circle. It has this little kind of teardrop shape pointing that way, and the hole it goes in has a teardrop shape pointing that way, so it makes it not spin. And these are a high wear component. If you 3D print it, I recommend using a pretty strong material, same as the strap should be made out of something strong. Now we're left with just the proximity sensor and fan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my very small flathead for both of these. The fan and proximity sensor are two of the only components that are held in with adhesive. So what you're going to want to do to get the fan out is you're going to want to get your flathead screwdriver. You're going to want to put it in this hole here. Completely avoid the cable, but push on the corner of the housing of the fan. You're going to need to push decently hard for this, so I'd brace it against a table. And it should be a bit harder for you, and you might hear kind of cracking sounds. Ideally, it's just the glue separating. I would not take this out unless you're replacing it, but luckily replacements are readily available and pretty cheap, at least here in the US. It's just a Delta fan. It's part number BSB0205HA5-00. It's just a little blower style box fan. And these are $9.55 for me, so that is replaceable, that is purchasable. It is held on with adhesive, which I've taken this out a couple of times and the adhesive hasn't gone bad. I'd say as long as you don't leave this exposed, you should be fine. They went really, really heavy on the adhesive, so I wouldn't worry about it going bad. Next I'm going to go for the proximity sensor, which is also pretty easy to get at. You're going to take that same flathead screwdriver, and then all the electronics for this are right in the middle, so if we stay right on the edge, we're not going to have any problems. I'm going to go right to the corner of this, get right under it, and then just pry it up from that corner. It's going to pop up, and then the cable itself is also held on with adhesive. This piece right here, there's this peg that goes inside this portion of the cable, and that's held on with adhesive. I'm just going to pop my flathead screwdriver under it and pry it up and out. This, along with the proximity sensor cover we're about to take off, is completely custom, and we're not going to be able to service that. The way that I get the proximity sensor cover out is, so it has this little window here that it needs to be transparent, but the back does not. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put my flathead screwdriver in, so I'm only pressing on back outside of view of that window. I'm just going to keep pushing until it pops out. There's our proximity sensor cover. And now we have a completely empty frame. That is complete disassembly. Sorry, the frame itself is fully 3D printable. The only considerations you're going to have to make are there's pretty thick foam on these four edges. It's going to completely block out light and still give a bit of an airflow path. I'd recommend finding some way to connect those in. These are the vent covers here and the vent covers that should be here, 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 and here are available in the step files. I don't have a good way of converting that to, you know, just something we could print out and cut out. But what I would recommend is I went to Hobby Lobby and got a very thin mesh that I plan to use for this, and this looks to be a thicker kind of felt that you might want to see if you can source, or you could peel the old ones off and stick them on yours. But that is completely disassembled. This part's 3D printable, 3D printable, 3D printable, 3D printable, replaceable, replaceable, do whatever, 3D printable, 3D printable. Past that, a lot of these are proprietary components, so we're not going to be able to source. I am curious. We can source these displays. We just can't. I don't know if we have a good way of separating these. I don't know if we want to, because we just trap a bunch of dust in there. But yeah. Now we're going to go back to reassembly. Just going to do everything in the exact opposite order I had. So I'm going to take my proximity sensor cover. Just going to slide it in. Then I'm going to get the sensor itself. I'm going to start with the sensor and then get the cable. Right over that cover. Get that in, and then with the cable, we're going to line it up with the peg. And then push it on. There we go. And this is actually where I have my semi-deck tool for. I'm going to use it here. I'm going to use it in one other spot. Once I have it aligned, I'm just going to come in here and just push on it a bunch to make sure it adheres. I'm going to give those one last good push. This cover right here is a high wear component. I guess the cover itself isn't, the adhesive is. It'll pop off a lot. I would be very careful getting anything on the middle where the sensor actually sees. Next I'm going to go for the fan. So go to this side, get that little cable, just shove it through. And that's going to be with the blower side facing the circle, and the housing facing the displays, or facing where your forehead would be. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to focus really on the corners. I'm going to give it a good bit of pressure there. You're not going to want to push on the middle, because it is just a box fan. You could damage it. That's in. I'm going to go install these back in. All you're going to do for this is line that up. And this is the first screw that I'm going to be screwing in. You want to be very, very, very careful with this type of screw. There's nothing metal that the threads are sunk into. It is purely threaded into the plastic. And everything that threads besides the back of the display housings is completely printable. I'm trying to think. Yeah, everything that you screw into is completely printable besides that. So it's not a massive concern, but still be very, very careful. When working with this type of screw, you're going to want to put it in very carefully and make sure you just get it aligned with the previous threads. It should be very easy to put in. Now with these particular bits, you're going to want to do them a bit tighter than normal. Everything else, you're going to want to tighten until it stops, and then just ever so slightly more. You want to make sure that it stays on, but you don't over tighten it. Yeah, these you want to go kind of tight on. Cool. Now we're going to go to the displays. I'm going to reassemble this housing. These are going to have text on them. The text is going to be readable from this way, and you're going to want the optic with the display flex going in the direction like top to bottom. Alright, with that in, I'm going to start reassembly of those housings. So you're going to make sure you have the right side. Yeah, it's going to be this side. This should always be readable, and then this is going to say L, this one's going to say R, with the lenses facing you. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to kind of straighten out this flex, and then the hole that it actually goes in is slanted like this. You're going to want to force it into, don't force it, you're going to want to put it into the top side, make sure it kind of gets caught so it doesn't rotate itself back. and then push it the rest of the way through. I wouldn't do too much pulling on this type of cable. Alright, now that's in. And then there is a specific direction that these go, so you're going to be careful when installing them. I'm going to put this down so I can show. These heat sinks are angled like this and like this. So this side is going to be noticeably, like you can't really see the rings around the screw holes. You can see the big ones here. The flatter side is going to be facing out. So I'm going to take this, and you're going to be careful with the thermal pad. You don't want to just completely mash it everywhere. You want it to be almost entirely, you want it to be entirely within the cavity of the display housing. There we go. And then we're going to go back to tightening it just until it stops, and then the tiniest bit more. We do not want to over-torque anything here. The chances of you squishing something are honestly relatively low, but the chances of you stripping out the post that it sits in are a lot higher. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these screws decently well in. And then I'm going to come back around and tighten in a star pattern. Cool. And then we're going to leave this foam for in a little bit, and then we're going to start with the other display. We're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to be mindful of the flex cable for this display. I'm going to take it, straighten out the tip of this, and then make sure you absolutely never fold this. That's one of the things you need to be most careful of. And then, if you can't tell, this is the part that I'm putting it in, and this is that high side that I'm pushing on. It's going to be in the outside of the headset on both sides. And then we're going to do the same thing with this one, where we're going to make sure we have the side that's touching my thumb does not really have any circles. The side that is over here has a very pronounced raise. So the side that has a pronounced raise is going to go towards the inside. And one thing to be very, very mindful if you are not using a lens protection jig is just be mindful of where you're setting the headset. If you sit it down on top of something, you could very easily scratch your lenses. Cool, and then I'm going to come in and tighten it with that star pattern again. We're going to apply even pressure. Sweet. Now I've done everything back up to the point of taking this out, so I'm just going to pop this back in now. We can do this at the end. It doesn't matter when we do this at this point. but we don't need to access this side anymore. And again, this is going to be 8 screws. You're going to be mindful, the big holes for your magnets, small holes for your screws. And that's only going to be on the edges. The middle ones are all screws. And then now that I've got all of these in, I'm going to do the same thing and actually fully tighten them all in a star pattern. Just try not to tighten one that's next to the one I just tightened, pretty much. Cool. So now I'm not going to be turning the headset over this way anymore, so it's a good time to reinstall these. These are not the same on both sides, they're mirrored. So again, what you're going to want to do is it has this little long kind of fork piece that's poking out, and then it has the 3 parts it grabs with. The widest part that it grabs with is going to be inside this little box where the heat sinks sit, and this part is going to be facing down on both. So I'm going to take it, get that long piece, just try and push it on. There we go. There's both of those back on, and they're going to be held down by these 2 screws, which are held on by the cover shell. I'm going to put on the USB ports next. These are the same part on both sides, it's just mirrored. So I'm going to take one, just line up the screw hole with that. I'm going to take this, and then there's going to be a screw hole right there on this one, and there's going to be a screw hole right there on this one. To put this back in, I'm going to put the port side into the port hole, and then push it all the way down, and then push it to make it flush with the side of the headset. Now we're going to be all set. We're just going to pop on our screw. And this is when you're going to make sure it's pretty firm. Don't tighten too hard, but it does support the USB port, so it will have actual stress on it. Do the same thing with this one. Put it in there, all the way in, and then just lay it flat. Now we're ready for our main board. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to put the stickers on the main board for this. If you have them in the frame, you can take them out, or you can put it in a different way, but this is how I like doing it. So I'm going to hold the display flexes back kind of with my thumb and pinky, or with my palm, depending on how I want to do it. And I'm going to push these to the side. And then I have 3 things I need to watch for now. I need to watch for my sticker, and then my proximity sensor connector. So I'm going to want to be putting the sticker in the hole above the flex cables for the displays, and then getting the main board under the proximity sensor connector. So I'm going to try and push this down, line it up, and then there we go. Now it's lined up. I'm going to just kind of hold this with my finger so it doesn't pop up. And then this is where I have my sim eject tool as well. This is the other part that I said I was going to use it for. I'm going to push one display connector out of the way, and then this isn't in all the way, so I'm just going to take it and carefully push it down so it's flat, and then use this to stick it on. I'll do the same over here. And now I'm going to screw that main board back in, which is going to be your top screw here and your top screw here. Cool. So we have that in, and we're just going to start plugging stuff back in. Fan's usually going to be the easiest. It's going to be bent in a way, so it's kind of obvious what way it plugs in. But if you look on one side, you're going to have the colors of the cable visible on the connector, and on the other side you're going to have black, and you just want the black side facing up. And you just want to align it with the connector, and this should not be hard to push in at all. This should be very easy. And it's not tactile, it'll just stay in once you get it lined up. And you always want to push and pull on the connector itself, never touch the cables. Now we've got that, I'm going to start putting it back on the USB and proximity sensors, proximity sensor connectors. So this has a piece on the board, and then there's also a piece on the bottom. If you look from the side, it can be a bit easier to line them up. Don't really know how well you can see that, but it's going to have an audible and tactile click when it's on. And that's how you know you have it, and then it should just stay. Going to do the same with this one. And then I'm going to do the same with the proximity sensor. This, you might need to pull out a little bit to get free. Cool. And then both of your USB things are going to have part of this little kind of tape shield that goes over this. Mine came damaged, both of them, from the factory. I wouldn't worry about them too much, but if you have them, I would line them up so the screw isn't going to mess them up in the future. Cool. Now we're going to focus on the display flexes. So we're going to make sure that piece we popped up earlier is still popped up. I like holding it from the side so I get an angle like this. If you look at the connector, it has these parts where it gets obviously wider. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take it with that black piece all the way up and just get those wide edges under the black piece. Like that. And then when you push the black piece down, it should click, and then there should be none of that wide bit visible from either side of the connector. And this should look relatively even. Now that's on. We're going to do the other one. Cool. Now we're going to get the foam. This foam acts as a light blocker because we have these large holes for fitting in the display flexes. I'm going to push this down. I'm going to take this. And I just use the Torx 6 that I've been using. You could use one of the smaller ones to make it possibly a bit easier. But you just want to stuff it down so it stays flat. Make sure you're not just like bunching it up in there. And then I push it so it is completely flush with the top of the hole. But don't push it all the way in. Cool. I'm going to do the same with you. Perfect. Now we have all that. So we're going to focus on the tracking PCB. So we're going to focus on three things with this. We need to make sure the display flexes are pushed down, and we need to make sure this connector is reconnected to the board right there. So I'm going to take this first. I'm just going to get up there. I'm going to click it on. It's going to be a bit difficult because you need to get your finger underneath the board. Cool. So I got that clicked, and now I'm going to make sure that I get my finger and push both of these display flexes down, and that this holds down without putting any weird pressure on them. So now I have my 3 screws. I have one here up at the top, and then you're actually going to see 4 screw holes at the bottom. So the one up here and up here is what you're going to be touching. Do not screw anything into these bottom ones. That's going to be held down by the bottom of the cover shell. Now I'm going to watch from the bottom here to make sure I'm not crushing the display connectors. Those display connectors, if you fold them, if you actually get a crease in them, they will break. Then now with that, we have our cover shell. Now, with our units reassembled, that should be everything. If you have any further questions about materials, files for this, everything like that is going to be in the Bigscreen Beyond Discord, specifically in the DIY Downloads, Devlog, and Mods and Makers channel.